Can you just try to sum up the importance of the Magnum tractor to Case IH and to farmers, to your own farm, but also to farmers that you interact with daily, just the importance of this particular product?
Tim, when I'm presenting to leadership and I'm presenting to anybody about Magnum tractors, one of my favorite slides, and I'm not a big one on PowerPoint, so for me to say I have a favorite slide is saying something. But my favorite slides, it shows a picture of inside of a Magnum cab, like you're sitting in the seat and you're looking at the Pro 1200 display and armrest and out the visibility of the front hood, right? And it's sitting in a cornfield with, I'm going to say, probably 8-inch tall corn, so that you can see the rows or anything. And what I always showcase everybody that'll listen, I said, this is the most important part of a Magnum tractor. And I said, it's this piece right here. When you imagine sitting in that cab, and I sit in that cab a lot, right? I've got my display right up here with all my technology data. I've got my controls. I can power my implements. I can power my tractor. This is truly where the technology and the implement and the tractor come together. And this is where the operator really manages those functions. It all comes together in the cab of a Magnum tractor. And that's been a unique key feature of the high horsepower two-wheel drive tractor, especially in the North American market and parts of the Western European market and Latin American market, Australian market. And it holds true today that the Magnum tractor that's where the operator interacts with the implements and the technology on their most critical applications. And that's what sets it apart. To me, that's the key driver in everything we do is when I'm sitting in that seat, I'm controlling my operation, right? That's where I'm making the on the fly decisions. Surely there's planning and other stuff, but man, that's where the rubber hits the road is right there with all of those pieces together.
Mm-hmm. And as you look back, how have the needs of farmer customers changed in terms of what they need from an OEM like Case IH and what they need from this equipment? How is it different than maybe when you were growing up on the farm?
The reliance certainly on the technology and the total solution. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, and a tractor was pretty much, I want to say, separate from the planter, but it was hydraulic hoses, right? Maybe some electrical was all you needed was to power the lights. Now it's plugging into the monitor. You're controlling all of the prescriptions and all the functions from the display. So it's really that technology integration that has changed. As farms have gotten larger and the need to cover more ground in a shorter period of time, plus as agronomic advancements have happened, both in the crops and the seeds and so on that the customers are using, there's a need there to be able to provide more data, to be more prescriptive, to be certainly doing whatever we can to manage customers' costs and keep them as low as possible on inputs. That's all driven. That was all there, in the 80s, 90s. The fundamentals haven't changed, but the technology integration has come leaps and bounds. So that's been one of the big changes that I've seen, not just in my career, but in the time I've spent on the farm as well as with the company. And I think that continues. I think it's really how do you make things as simple, seamless, and easy for an operator to take those agronomic data, all the agronomic data, all of the information that they have available, help them boil that down to the pieces that make the biggest impact and really allow them to be more productive and manage. I always say keeping the cost low on a per acre basis, as well as driving efficiency very high.
And how have the latest models of Magnum Series tractors been able to kind of meet that increasing expectation?
Well, Tim, I'm a product guy, have been for a long time, and I'm a big fan of Magnum tractors. I appreciate you asking. One of the new features, we just came out with a new series of Magnum tractors. We launched them earlier this year, and we had a big deal at the Farm Progress Show and later shows. We brought out the new Magnums on the 355 model, the 405. We brought forward, enhanced a new feature called the APM2, or Advanced Productivity Management. Now, I can tell you, we've gone back on APM back to about 2010, where it's kind of like a speed setting, kind of cruise control to a degree. A customer would go into a field, they'd set their target speed, and then the tractor would work to provide the most fuel efficient solution, be it engine RPMs or gear and so on. We've taken that a step further. It really behaves a lot more like a cruise control. We made it much more intuitive to where you set your target speed, the tractor will adjust its engine RPM, it'll select its own gear and so on. You can put in certain droop settings if you want it to pull down to a certain point on engine RPM. You could limit how far it pulls down that way for fan applications and so on. You can shuttle, you can brake, you can press the clutch and engage. It doesn't kick you out here and there just because you had a manual input. It really goes from a gear and a speed-based type of management input to a speed-based. You're just selecting how fast you want the tractor to go, and you're trusting that tractor with the technology that it's got, as well as the command that's coming to it from the implement, to go out there and be as efficient as possible. And it's a really neat system. We've been working on it for the last couple of years and very happy to see that out on the new Magnum tractors today.
And if I'm, sitting down in my brand new Magnum series tractor, what do you like to share about it from your side of things to maybe a new customer to really help them understand what goes into that piece of equipment?
It's a great point. Some of the things are just the little points we would point out that show that we spend a lot of time talking with the customers about this. For the Case IH Magnum tractor, we have our multifunction handle on the throttle and the shift lever. And what you'll notice when you sit in the tractor and you put your hand on it, your thumb naturally rests on your shift up, shift down button, as well as your shuttle. We have a whole bunch of programmable buttons that are located there, all within a button click. So as the operator is driving down the road, or if they're in the field doing something, naturally their right arm wants to sit right up against that multifunction handle, and it's real easy to use. Same thing goes when they're driving. We use a shuttle lever on the left-hand side. And sometimes people say, why do you do that? And I say, okay, well, I want you to look at the implement. I want you to get all comfortable, pretend, especially at farm shows, spend a lot of time talking with customers. Turn around the back, look, you're hooking up the implement. I said, okay, good. Now lift your middle finger. And without question, they lift their middle finger, and right there on the left hand where they naturally have their hand fitting on the steering wheel is their forward reverse shuttle. We can do that on the right hand as well. We can do it on the left, but taking that time to say, look, we've come to this solution, not just because we've had a bunch of engineers and product guys sitting in a room. We've had a lot of customers come in the room. These customers have molded the joystick, told us what kind of angle they like, where do they want the buttons for their thumb, how do they want to naturally sit for long days in the field, where they don't have to think about where the buttons, the controls are. They're just there. That way they can focus on the more mind taxing and more challenging aspects of their operation, which is getting the crop, planted and getting the crop out of the field.
Very cool. Very cool. What about has there been, you've been at this a long time and you're pretty aware of how these tractors are used, but I'm curious along the way, has there been any point where you've been surprised at a use for the tractor that you hadn't considered or you hadn't thought about?
I think the part that gets me, Tim, is the diversity of the applications in which they're in. I live in Indiana. I'm sitting here in Indiana right now, and if I see a Magnum tractor, it's on a tillage tool or it's on a corn planter. Right? I mean, that's so in your mind's eye when you picture a Magnum. Sometimes if I catch myself doing interviews like this, talking about just planting and tillage. But if you go to Florida, Louisiana, and you're in sugarcane country, that's completely different. When you're in cotton country, now the spacings are different. One of the opportunities I've had going across the United States, what I think is really cool, is watching Magnums in sweet potato operations. When they're transplanting sweet potatoes are actually planted or on a transplanter with human hands. You might get 12 to 16 to 24 people sitting on a transplanter as the tractor's going through the field, putting the sweet potatoes in. That is really cool. It kind of blows my mind just to see a tractor driving down a field with a row of people sitting on the back, planting live plants. That's just because it's different from where I sit in my lens of the world, right? But that's commonplace when you're down in parts of the Mississippi Delta or in North Carolina, things like that. So I would tell you, I think it's the diversity of the application never, ever ceases to amaze me. How they utilize Magnum, how they utilize high horsepower, how they utilize the hydraulics, how they utilize the precision farming components. It's so diverse from one end of the country to the other, east to west, north to south, doesn't matter. But it's really awesome to just see how that tractor can fit multiple different applications and allow customers to, it's another tool to help them be successful at what they do.
Right. And it's a tall order for you all to try to meet this very specific needs of each of these farmers when you're looking at, integrated solutions. Yeah, the product can be great and get better every year, but you've got to find dynamic ways of coming up with solutions through the product plus, various other forms of equipment